I was just thinking about the impact on people with chronic illness that is beyond anything else that you would normally consider. And that is with the question marks that sit over your head. So, whether you know what your diagnosis is, or whether you're not really sure, or whether you feel like you didn't go through a proper diagnostic process, or maybe you're not being treated appropriately, there's this thing that sits in your head. And a lot of people will be like, oh, just get over it, or try and forget about it, or whatever. But it just sits there. Now, I have had chronic symptoms for a very long time. And for a long time, I was told they were just fibromyalgia. I had one word and it was fibromyalgia. And that never quite sat right, especially as I started doing research and realized that there were causes or reasons for pain. So, for example, with my neck issues, I could feel something happening in the neck that corresponded to the pain. And fibromyalgia is generally pain that is caused by who knows what, not an injury, not a specific thing happening physiologically. And so when we found out about hypermobility spectrum disorder, and I read all of the details about it and all of the symptoms that go with it, light bulbs went on, right? But you are sitting there in the meantime with question marks, right? And that takes an impact. And then you go through the process, you get your research done, you talk to the doctor, and if you're lucky like me, your doctor goes through the criteria carefully and says, yes, I think it's this. But then the trick, particularly here for me in New Zealand, was that she agreed with me that it was probably hypermobility spectrum disorder, suspected EDS, but she had to apologize because there was nothing else we could do. There is no specialist in New Zealand that deals with this, and in the public system, rheumatology don't see people with hypermobility because there's no medicine for them. So that was like the end of the line. And so then you're stuck there sitting with this hypermobility spectrum disorder sitting, and it's like, okay, you can go pay a private this person who knows a bit about it, and you can go pay a private that person who knows a little bit about it. But who knows if that would even measurably change things day to day. Meanwhile, my list of other issues is hanging about with things to go on. And I just think it's really, it's a lot. It's a really under discussed situation. And this is what I've also been dealing with in the last ages. So for a very long time, I have had gut issues. And I was told, oh, well, you just have a sensitive gut. And after a while, they labeled it IBS. And I do have a sensitive gut. And there are little sensitivities, but they are not the big things that have been happening to me. So for example, my gut is a bit sensitive if it's empty, and it's a bit sensitive about nonsense things like MSG or artificial sweeteners, but otherwise it's not really that bad. The problem is that I have these flare-ups, and they've been becoming worse and kind of more discreet. So in October, I had a very bad flare-up. I was in so much pain. It was like 8 out of 10. Went to urgent care, and they called it gastritis, but it was a bit of a nonsense situation anyway. I don't want to go too deeply into it unless you let me know if you have any questions about it. Do you want me to do a full in-depth, blow by blow of what happened with the gut situation? Just in case you're going through the same thing and you're wondering, okay, what does it look like for someone else, and what happens in the end? Let me know in the comments. But anyway, had that, they let it go. Then in November, I had another flare-up. It was about 2 or 3 days long, but I managed to get on top of it with Colofac, which is a gut muscle relaxant, and some electrolytes. And so I was able to bounce back from it quicker than I would have. And then in December, I had a very bad one. I was incapacitated. It was multiple days long, and my doctor wasn't available. So I made an appointment with, I have an online system where you can have a quick appointment with an online telehealth doctor. And she said, how come you've got such a history of gut issues, and how come you're on these medicines but there's been no testing? And I said, well, you tell me, my friend. So she sent me for a stool test, which measured something called calprotectin, which is an inflammatory marker related to the gut. And a few days passed, and then late on the Friday night, I got a phone call saying, your calprotectin marker is sky high, please report to the hospital in the morning, which was a fright. It was a fright. So the Saturday morning, rocked up to the hospital, spent 2 days there. They gave me x-rays, they were monitoring me, asking me all sorts of questions. I did more stool tests, more blood tests. I was sent home on the Monday because I was waiting for a colonoscopy, and there was no point waiting in the hospital for that, but it turns out I ended up having the colonoscopy on the Tuesday. And then slowly the flare died down. So I kind of recovered from all of that, I want to say second or third week of January. And then I was told I was on the wait list for seeing general medicine and to get an MRE, which is an MRI with some contrast specifically for your small bowel. And I thought, I don't want to wait months and months in the public system when we have insurance. So I got an appointment with a private specialist, and she went through everything with me. She immediately scheduled an MRE, and I did further blood testing and stool tests for her. And then it took about a week, and then I had the MRE, and then a week later I got the results that the calprotectin, so the third calprotectin was now back to normal. So the first one was sky high, the second one was very high, and then this last one was in the normal realm. And then I had to wait another week longer. So yesterday, when I heard from the doctor. Now, in the middle of this, I also saw a report uploaded to my doctor. The first thing was that the biopsy from the colonoscopy apparently showed cryptitis, so patchy inflammation and abscesses across multiple parts of the regions that they were looking at. But then after a group discussion, and somehow they decided that they were going to take into account my symptoms as well as looking at that rather than just looking at it. I don't know why you would do that. I don't know why. It's not a subjective thing. But anyway, so they took that back and they said they actually don't think that there is much in the way of inflammation there. Like, so it is there, but not really there. I don't really know. So they have decided, because the colonoscopy visually was clear, the MRE visually was clear, the biopsy had some stuff, but nothing really indicative. The calprotectin came down, so their inclination at this point is to watch and wait. So now I have 2 standing lab tests there. So I'm going to go and do a poo sample in the middle of my next flare to see if the inflammation rises during that flare. And then another one in April because she wants to see a pattern. So watch and wait. So 2.5 months of extreme testing and stress and worry and all of this stuff sitting on my nervous system, and we still don't know. It's still a question mark, and it is great because we know big things, right? There's no big unchecked bowel issues with damage happening. There is no cancer in those areas. All of those things are excellent. It's great news. But this thing still sits on your head because the working hypothesis at the moment is that it was some kind of infection. So I had some kind of infection. Somehow I got an infection so that I didn't notice the infection, but the impact of the infection impacted me. I don't get that part anyway. So they're saying that maybe the December was an infection, and then the high calprotectin was a result of that, and then now it's eased off. The trick is that doesn't explain the October-November issues, so I don't really know. But at least the one thing I know is that it's open, so we've done these tests, it's all logged, and I've got the stool tests ready to go and do in the next little while to keep reading the pattern, because from what I've learned, early and mild Crohn's disease and other IBDs can start like this. They can be so early that they're kind of indeterminate, and then they progress. So either the next calprotectin will be normal and we'll say, hey, it was an infection, move on with our lives. Or the inflammation levels will change and then we'll have to come back for another plan. And so it's like good news, but also I didn't actually get what I asked for, because what I asked for was help. Like, how do I deal with these periodic flares that incapacitate me? So this all just sits there, right? It all sits in your nervous system, and there's no way to really categorize it, or, there's no way to deal with it. The one thing is that with my age now, with my understanding, with my private insurance, I know that I've got the levers in place to deal with it. And of course, a long time ago, I didn't have that. I didn't have the confidence in myself to advocate for myself, and I didn't have the financial thing to kind of back up any other testing, all that kind of thing. So it is different. and it hits different. But that's where a lot of us are, and I think it's scary and unfair. Especially, I just hear all the time of people with things like fibromyalgia, but actually they weren't properly diagnosed and it is something else, like it's hypermobility spectrum disorder, or MECFS, or any number of things. And so you have this concern that you are not properly diagnosed, but doctors are so dismissive about it, because for them, it's not the highest or worst case they're going to see in the day. There's nothing physical. They can go, yep, I can treat that. Let's move on. And so that's quite hard for them to manage. Doesn't excuse it. So yeah, that's a little bit of my musings of what it is like. So if you're here with me in this place where you have chronic conditions, but you don't know exactly what's going on, oh, I feel you, my friend, I feel you. But also that's an update of where we're at. So after all these months, we don't know. And I don't know what's going to happen in my next flare-up. I don't know when it will be. But I do know for sure what happens now with these flare-ups is that not only is the actual flare-up and stomach pain and all that troubling and impacting my life, but I get a severe fatigue. So my fatigue is much worse as a result. And so one thing I'm doing actually now is getting more serious about my symptom tracking. And so for a very long time, I've only tracked by paper log, and it's more just for me to keep track of my patterns over time. But what I want now is documented things where you can see. So I actually created a spreadsheet for my symptom tracking that I put in each day, just my few things I track as usual. If you're curious about symptom tracking, I have a video, and if you have any questions, put them below, because I'm happy to make a video about it, because symptom tracking is a very important tool in our arsenal to support us with our self-advocacy. But I input them, and I've set it up so that it makes automatic averages. So in it, I track 4 symptoms, so pain, fatigue, and then 2 others, which are like variable to whatever you need, and I'm going to make one of them gut. And so then what I've got is that I can track the averages. So I can track the average over the month, and then I've got a dashboard where you track the average over the year. If you're curious about this spreadsheet, I actually sell it in my shop. It's down below, and you can check it out. But basically, I want to get real serious on seeing, okay, what is the things looking like? How often is it happening? Because I feel like I need data to back up whatever is happening, and I kind of wish I had it sooner. So yeah, I guess that's what it comes down to. New thing, we don't know really what it is yet. I don't actually even have any help of how to manage these flare-ups because they are debilitating, and the medicine they've given me, this Colofac, helps a little, but it doesn't actually fix the situation. So there are days where I just can't even function. So something is going on. And new symptom tracking, because self-advocacy is so important, and I think I've got a lot more work to do in my future. So that's that. If you've been here watching this journey, thanks for being here. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any videos you want me to make a topic on, please pop the comments. And if you want to come and join Going Our Own Pace Substack, it's a free newsletter / blog type situation where I keep my articles. Come and join below, and I'll talk to you again soon.